Imagine a man whose mind unlocked the secret to feeding the world, yet whose hands unleashed clouds of death that choked the battlefields of Europe. Fritz Haber, a name etched in both triumph and tragedy, stands as one of history's most paradoxical figures, a chemist who saved billions from starvation, while condemning millions to agonizing ends. This is the story of a brilliant innovator, a devoted patriot, and a tormented soul, whose discoveries reshaped humanity in ways we still grapple with today. From the bustling laboratories of late 19th century Germany to the blood-soaked trenches of World War I, Haber's journey reveals the razor-thin line between creation and destruction, progress and horror. As we delve into his life, we'll uncover the scientific breakthroughs, the personal sacrifices, and the ethical quagmires that defined him, ensuring that by the end, you'll see how one man's duality mirrors the complexities of our own world. Born on December 9, 1868, in the industrial city of Breslau, now Rokow in Poland, Fritz Haber entered Germany. On the cusp of unification and rapid modernization, the son of a prosperous Jewish dye merchant, Siegfried Haber, and his wife Paula, Fritz grew up in a household steeped in commerce and curiosity. Breslau, a vibrant hub of trade and scholarship in Prussian Silesia, buzzed with the energy of the Second Industrial Revolution. Factories churned out textiles and chemicals, and the air carried the sharp scent of innovation mixed with urban grit. Young Fritz, with his sharp intellect and restless spirit, found himself drawn not to his father's business, but to the mysteries of matter itself. At just 10 years old, he was already experimenting with homemade chemicals in the family attic, much to his parents' bemusement and occasional alarm. This early fascination set the stage for a life dedicated to unraveling nature's secrets. Though few could have foreseen the global consequences, Haber's childhood was not without shadows. His mother Paula died when he was only 13, a loss that left an indelible mark on the sensitive boy. The Haber home, once filled with intellectual discussions around the dinner table, grew quieter, more focused on the practicalities of running a dye works. Siegfried, a pragmatic man, urged Fritz toward a career in business, enrolling him in the local Realschule for a technical education. Yet Fritz's heart lay elsewhere. He devoured books on physics and chemistry, inspired by the era's scientific giants like Justus von Liebig, whose work on agricultural chemistry hinted at chemistry's power to transform society. By his late teens, Haber was determined to pursue academia, a path that would take him far from Breslau's familiar streets. In 1886, at age 18, he enrolled at the Technische Hochschule in Berlin, immersing himself in the lectures of renowned chemists like A.W. Hoffmann. Berlin, the beating heart of German science, offered Haber a world of laboratories equipped with the latest gas lamps and distillation apparatus, where ideas flowed as freely as the Spree River. But Haber's university years were marked by indecision and exploration. He bounced between institutions, spending time at Heidelberg University, under the organic chemist Bunsen, then at the Zurich in Switzerland, where he studied under Georg Lunge. These moves weren't aimless. They reflected Haber's voracious appetite for knowledge. At Zurich, he delved into physical chemistry, a burgeoning field blending physics and chemistry to explain reactions at the molecular level. It was here, amid the alpine mists and rigorous seminars, that Haber began to develop his signature approach, combining theoretical insight with practical application. He earned his doctorate in 1891 with a thesis on the decomposition of hydrocarbons, a modest work that nonetheless showcased his knack for bridging lab experiments with industrial potential. Returning to Germany, Haber briefly apprenticed in his father's dye factory, but the pull of academia proved irresistible. By 1894, he had secured a position as an assistant at the Technische Hochschule in Karlsruhe, a move that would launch his career into the stratosphere. Karlsruhe, nestled in the Black Forest region, was a center for electrochemistry and engineering, providing Haber with the tools to experiment freely. In Karlsruhe, Haber blossomed. Appointed as a private docent unsalaried lecturer in 1896, he quickly gained a reputation for his dynamic teaching style, energetic, precise, and laced with humor that kept students engaged late into the night. His lectures on physical chemistry weren't dry recitations. They were vivid explorations of how atoms danced in reactions, illustrated with demonstrations that sometimes bordered on theatrical. Haber married Clara Immerwahr in 1901, a fellow chemist and the first woman to earn a PhD from the University of Breslau. Clara, intelligent and independent, shared Haber's passion for science, but their union would later become a poignant counterpoint to his wartime choices. Together, they welcomed a son, Hermann, in 1902, grounding Haber in domestic life amid his rising professional star. Professionally, Haber focused on electrochemistry, publishing papers on the electrolysis of salts and the thermodynamics of solutions. One key innovation was his work on the contact process for sulfuric acid production, which improved efficiency for industrial dye-making, a nod to his roots. By 1906, he had been promoted to full professor, a rare feat for a Jewish scientist in an era of subtle anti-Semitism. His institute at Karlsruhe became a magnet for talent, attracting researchers from across Europe who marveled at its state-of-the-art equipment, including high-pressure reaction vessels that foreshadowed his greatest breakthrough. The dawn of the 20th century brought Haber face-to-face with one of humanity's grandest challenges: feeding a booming population. Europe's population had exploded from 200 million in 1800 to over 400 million by 1900, straining agricultural limits. Nitrogen, essential for plant growth, was scarce. Natural sources like guano from South American bird islands and Chilean saltpeter deposits couldn't keep pace. Without synthetic fertilizers, famines loomed as farmland degraded. Haber, ever the pragmatist, saw chemistry as the solution. Nitrogen makes up 78% of the air we breathe, but fixing it, converting gaseous N2 into usable compounds like ammonia NH3, requires immense energy to break the triple bond between nitrogen atoms. Nature does this via bacteria in soil, but scaling it industrially seemed impossible. Enter the Haber-Bosch process, Haber's crowning achievement. Developed in collaboration with engineer Carl Bosch at BASF, Haber first demonstrated ammonia synthesis in 1909, using iron catalysts under high pressure to 100 atmospheres and temperature around 500 C. It wasn't perfect, yields were low and explosions were a risk, but it worked. Bosch scaled it up, and by 1913, the first factory in Aarau produced 30 tons of ammonia daily. This process revolutionized agriculture, enabling the Green Revolution decades later. Today, it underpins a third of global food production, sustaining nearly half the world's 8 billion people. Without it, experts estimate billions would starve. Haber's Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1918 cited this as an exceedingly important means of improving the standards of agriculture and the well-being of mankind. Yet, even as Haber celebrated this triumph, storm clouds gathered over Europe. Nationalism simmered, alliances tightened, and the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 ignited World War I. Haber, a fervent German patriot despite his Jewish heritage, greeted the war with enthusiasm. He signed the Manifesto of the 93, a 1914 declaration by intellectuals defending Germany's actions against allied accusations of barbarism. In the face of lies and slanders, it proclaimed uniting professors, artists, and scientists in a chorus of loyalty. For Haber, war was a test of national will and science its ultimate weapon. At 45, he volunteered for military service, leveraging his institute's resources for the war effort. The British naval blockade had cut off Chile's nitrate imports, crucial for explosives like gunpowder and TNT. Haber's ammonia process, oxidizing to nitric acid via the Ostwald process, provided a domestic alternative. Factories ramped up, producing 150,000 tons of nitrogen compounds annually by 1916, sustaining Germany's artillery barrage. Without this, the war might have ended in months as munitions dwindled. Haber himself noted in letters how his work belongs to his country in wartime, echoing the era's belief that scientists served the state above all. But Haber's contributions extended far beyond fertilizers and bombs. Frustrated by the trench stalemate where machine guns and barbed wire turned battles into meat grinders, he proposed a radical weapon, chemical gas. The 1907 Hague Convention banned poison in projectiles, but Haber argued that released from canisters, it skirted the rules. Chlorine, a yellowish-green gas heavier than air, could drift into enemy lines, suffocating without shells. In early 1915, Haber, promoted to captain and head of the war chemistry section, assembled a team of 150 scientists and 1,300 technicians. They tested gases on animals and volunteers, refining masks with activated carbon filters. Nobel laureates like James Franck and Otto Hahn joined, pitting their intellect against French chemist Victor Grignard on the other side. Haber personally oversaw preparations at Ypres, Belgium. On April 22, 1915, as dusk fell, 5,730 cylinders released 168 tons of chlorine, forming a toxic cloud for miles wide. It rolled toward Allied trenches held by French, Canadian, and Algerian troops. Panic ensued. Soldiers choked, lungs filling with fluid as if drowning on dry land. Over 5,000 died that day, with 15,000 injured, their skin blistered and eyes streaming. Haber watched from a nearby hill, later calling it a success that broke the deadlock, though gains were minimal due to wind shifts and reserves. Eyewitness accounts described the horror: men clawing at throats, bodies piling in trenches, the air reeking of bleach and death. The Second Battle of Ypres marked the birth of modern chemical warfare, and Haber its father. Gas attacks escalated. By war's end, all sides used it, deploying phosgene odorless, deadlier and mustard gas blistering skin and lungs. Haber's unit developed artillery shells for precision, ignoring Hague bans. He formulated Haber's rule: toxicity equals concentration times exposure time. Guiding dosages low levels over hours equaled high bursts. Defending his work, Haber equated gas to bullets. Death is death by whatever means inflicted. He dismissed cruelty claims, noting gas caused fewer mutilations than shrapnel. Yet criticism mounted. Allied leaders branded it barbaric. Einstein, a colleague, later decried it. Most devastating was the personal toll. Clara, horrified by the perversion of science, confronted Fritz on the night of a Berlin gas demonstration. The next morning, May 2, 1915, she shot herself with his service revolver in their garden, dying in their son's arms. Haber, devastated but stoic, attended her funeral in uniform before rushing back to Ypres. He shielded Hermann from the truth, sending him to boarding school. Clara's suicide, whispered in scientific circles, underscored the ethical fracture in Haber's life, his brilliance weaponized at the cost of love. As the war dragged into 1916, Haber's influence peaked. He directed the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin-Dahlem, now a war machine with 1,500 staff researching gases, vaccines, and fuels. Pioneer Regiments 35 and 36, under his advisory, specialized in gas deployment. Innovations included Deposgene shells and arsenical irritants forcing mask removal. Mustard gas, introduced in 1917 at Ypres, lingered in soil. Denying ground, Haber was skeptical, as Germany lacked defenses, suffering 90% casualties from it later. By 1918, 30% of shells contained gas. Over 1.3 million casualties, 90,000 deaths. Yet strategically, gas was limited, winds backfired, masks improved. Haber received the Iron Cross and a captaincy denied in his youth, but victory eluded. Germany's defeat in November 1918 shattered him. The Treaty of Versailles banned his gases, and Allies charged war crimes later dropped. Post-war, Haber rebuilt, extracting gold from seawater, a failed venture, and pioneering pesticide research. Tragically, his Zyklenbier hydrogen cyanide fumigant later enabled Holocaust gas chambers, killing over 1 million, though without his involvement. The interwar years tested Haber's resilience. Anti-Semitism rose with economic woes. As a Jew, he faced slights despite patriotism. He divorced in 1917, remarrying Charlotte Nathan in 1917, having 2 more children, and his health faltered from overwork. In 1933, Nazis seized power. Haber, director of the Kaiser Wilhelm Society, resigned rather than fired Jewish colleagues. Offered a post at the Daniel Seif Institute in Rehovot, Palestine, by Chaim Weizmann, he departed. En route, heart failure struck in Basel, Switzerland, on January 29, 1934. At age 65, his funeral was modest. Einstein eulogized him as a great researcher and a tragic figure. Haber's legacy endures in duality. The Haber-Bosch process averted Malthusian famines. Post-WWII, it fueled India's wheat boom, tripling yields. Yet chemical warfare scarred history, inspiring the 1925 Geneva Protocol banning gases. Ethically, Haber embodies science's double-edged fertilizer versus poison, sustenance versus slaughter. His story warns innovation demands moral vigilance. As we reflect, consider how his choices echo in today's debates over AI, biotech, and climate tech. Fritz Haber fed the world but poisoned its soul. In his life, we see our own potential for both.